the only question that kept coming to my mind every time I saw one of these doctors was like, okay, I hear what you're saying. I need to get a mastectomy. I need to get a hysterectomy. I need to have kids. I need to make sure I'm done having kids. I need to do all these things. But I'm 26. Like, I'm not married yet. I'm not ready for a mastectomy. I'm not ready for a hysterectomy. I don't even know if I can get pregnant. Right? Like, I'm about to get married. I'm not even married yet. Like, there's so many things that I understand you're telling me I need to do in the next 7 years.
Welcome to Radiant Mom Rising. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and uplifted. I'm your host, Mary Dibble, and in each episode, we dive into amazing stories, insights, and conversations that help moms like you chase your dreams and embrace your worth. Let's rise and shine together. Welcome to today's episode, where we're about to embark on an incredibly powerful conversation with the amazing Dr. Simran Malhotra. Dr. Simran Malhotra is a triple board certified physician in internal medicine, hospice and palliative care, and lifestyle medicine, as well as a certified health and wellness coach. She was recognized as a top doc by Baltimore Magazine in palliative medicine for 3 consecutive years. Dr. Malhotra is a diplomat of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and has completed several certifications, including T. Colin Campbell's plant-based nutrition, chef culinary coaching, and Well Coaches health and wellness coaching. With nearly a decade of experience in both inpatient and outpatient palliative care, Dr. Malhotra leverages the invaluable lessons learned from end-of-life care to advocate for the importance of lifestyle medicine and a positive mindset in enhancing overall well-being. If you've ever faced health challenges, especially those tied to family's genetic history, or if you struggle with burnout while juggling motherhood, this episode is for you. Simran courageously shares how she faced her family's history of cancer and decided to break the cycle by making profound life changes that transformed her health and well-being. Her journey of overcoming fear and taking control of her health will inspire you to take small steps towards creating lasting positive change in your own life. This episode is packed with insight, inspiration, and practical tips that will motivate you to prioritize your health and happiness so you can show up for your family, business, and most importantly, yourself. Grab your headphones, get comfortable, and let's dive into this life-changing conversation with Simran. Hey, mamas, before we get into the show, I'm so excited to invite you to a free webinar I'm hosting with the amazing Michelle Charpentier on January 14th, 2025 at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you've been dreaming of starting or growing your own business but feel stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure of where to begin, this is for you. It's called Ditch the Doubt, Empowering Mompreneurs to Take a Leap of Faith and Succeed. We'll be tackling the struggles of starting a business, how to overcome imposter syndrome, and why building your dream business matters. Plus, we'll remind you just how incredible you already are and show you how to tap into that greatness to create success. I'll be focusing on belief, mindset, and accountability because those are game changers. And Michelle will share time management and project management strategies to help you balance motherhood and entrepreneurship like a pro. This webinar is going to be packed with real talk, practical tools, and inspiration to help you finally ditch the doubts and take action on your dreams. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. I cannot wait to see you there. It's going to be live. Feel free to RSVP so that we can send you reminders to ensure that you do not miss out on this incredible opportunity. Mama, this is your moment. Let's make it happen. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Radiant Mom Rising podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. Today, I have Simran with me. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get this going by introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and who you are and what you do.
Well, so in order to be, I guess, respectful of your podcast, my favorite thing in the world and my most important job is that I am a mom of 2. So I have a 6 and 7.5-year-old kids, originally Canadian, but live in the States with my husband, who is also Canadian, but we met here. Professionally, I am a triple board certified physician. So I did my initial training in internal medicine, which is just general medicine. And then I did subspecialty training in hospice and palliative care, which is essentially working with people living with serious illness, oftentimes at the end of life. And then I went on to become board certified in something called lifestyle medicine, and then also a health and wellness coach, a culinary coach, and just all the other things that have unfolded along my own journey as when I became the patient about 10 years ago. So in a nutshell, that's me.
Oh, wow. So let's dive into that if you want to share a little bit, because it's always interesting to see that how our life unfolds and how things that we go through, in turn bring us to our purpose and how we can help others. So tell us a little bit about your background story and what your journey's been like.
So I come from a very, very strong family history of cancer. And this is, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I think it's a great time of year to really talk about breast cancer awareness and also action against breast cancer. And so the reason I say I have a very strong family history of breast cancer is because only 5 to 10% of people and women actually carry a genetic mutation that increases their risk of getting certain cancers like breast cancer. Whereas majority of the women, so the average woman's risk of breast cancer is about 12%. That means, 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer. And majority of the women that are diagnosed with breast cancer don't have any sort of family history. So I come from the background of a family who carries a genetic mutation. So there's been about 10 women on my mom's side of the family who have had either breast or ovarian cancer. When I was 26, so exactly 10 years ago, I was in the middle of my internal medicine residency. And, I don't know what your background is, but I'm South Asian, I'm Indian. And in our background, in our culture, we don't like to talk about disease. We don't like to talk about illness. We don't talk about death, all of the things. And so over the many years, that I had heard that there were women on my mom's side of the family who had gotten sick, but it was always very vague. Like, what did they get sick from? What did they die from? It was always very vague. Now, my own mom, was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 33. So I was 13 at the time. So she got treated, surgery, chemo, radiation, all the things behind closed doors, typical Indian way of managing things, right? Like, you don't talk about it. You just kind of put your head down, do the thing, and then move on. So I was 13. Fast forward to when I was 26, now in my residency, someone else in my family got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And now it started kind of raising red flags in my head because I knew a lot more, right, as a doctor. And so then I encouraged my mom to get genetic testing again. And just a caveat, right? Like, we are making so many advances in genetics and genetic testing that just because you get tested one time and it's negative, like she did when she was 33 at the time of her first cancer diagnosis, fast forward 15 years later, she got tested again. And this time we found out that she carries a genetic mutation in the BRCA1 gene or BRCA gene. And basically what that means is her lifetime risk of breast and ovarian cancer is like radically high.
Oh.
So, like I said, the average woman's risk is 12% when you carry the BRCA genetic mutation. For example, for me, I found out a year later, got tested, found out I carry the genetic mutation, and my lifetime risk of breast cancer is 87%. So average woman, by the time she gets to 75, she has a 12% lifetime risk of breast cancer. For me, it was like, okay, by the time I'm 75, my lifetime risk was 87% of breast cancer and then 50 to 60% of ovarian cancer. So just a caveat, it's like a lot of people will say, like, I have a strong family history or it runs in my family, but just a caveat to know that true genetic mutations or family histories that carry these, hereditary genes is only 5 to 10% of the population. So it's a very small number, whereas most women that are diagnosed with breast cancer don't have any family history. So we carry this genetic mutation. So I'm 26. I found out the reason I decided to get tested was I met my husband at the hospital at the time. We met at the hospital and we were engaged. And so I figured, okay, this would be life-changing information for him to know about, right? So I decided to get genetic testing and fast forward, yes, found out that I carried the BRCA1 genetic mutation. And ever since then, I My entire life has changed ever since finding out about that mutation. I don't even know where to go from here, but I have spent the last 10 years of my life caring for people living with serious illness. Most of my patients were at the end of life. I have worked in hospice care, meaning I have taken care of a lot of young people dying from cancer. Some of them even had the same genetic mutation as me. And it was a really interesting time in my life because I found out about this mutation and then I started having to see doctors and get, mammograms and MRIs and all this stuff. But at the same time, I was like going into the hospital and taking care of dying people. And it was a very crazy time in my life. And so it was almost like sometimes I almost felt like I was looking at a mirror of my own
Yeah.
reflection, right? And for me, this whole genetic mutation piece, which when you go into the cancer community and you talk to a lot of women with these mutations, like it is, you'll hear a lot of like, why me, like what is this, like a lot of, and it's a horrible thing, and it's life changing, and there's a lot of difficult decisions, and there's a lot of fear and anxiety, but it's also all about perspective, right? And I like to think about it, and I'm going on a little bit of a rant here, but I like to think about it. My perspective is like, when you go to the gym, if you look to your right, and this person is like lifting, way more than you and is way more chiseled than you and just has everything you want, and you feel like, I wish I could be like that person. Well, if you look to your, that's your right. If you look to your left, there's going to be somebody who, you know, is using 1 pound weights. There's going to be somebody who wishes they could be in your place, right? And
Absolutely.
that has been my whole perspective with this genetic mutation, navigating this genetic mutation while also caring for people that are dying at the end of life. For me, it's like, wow, this genetic mutation is such a blessing because it gave me choices to be proactive for my health
Yeah.
that my mom and my patients didn't get.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I'll tell you, in 2020, I ended up having a risk reducing bilateral mastectomy with aesthetic flat closure, which means I chose not to have reconstruction. And I had a total hysterectomy. So I radically reduced my lifetime risk of getting cancer. But that was a choice that I got to make, that, so many of my patients who have passed away would have done anything to have that choice so they could still be alive today. And that's my perspective of having this genetic mutation,
And
right?
what,
So like,
yeah.
what's
Right.
wrong is always available, but so is what's right, what's going right.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, well, it's beautiful to see you be able to have that perspective instead of the victim mentality, because it is easy to feel like, why me? But you're right. There is a reason. Even the bad stuff, it's always a way for you to reevaluate your life, reevaluate what you can do. And you're right, you got options for it. You could have lived your life completely unknowing and then just be caught with an actual diagnosis.
Yeah.
Imagine that then. And so I'm so grateful that you had the opportunity and that you took it, because it's another thing to kind of know these things, but it's another to take action towards it. So I commend you for that. And I love that. And I'm half Trinidad, and
Okay.
Trinidad, and I'm half Puerto Rican. But yeah, I do understand about how, like, so for me and my family, diabetes is a big thing that runs in the family, and they're recently actually learning more and more with the siblings that it's not just the type A or type B, but it's a different kind that is a genetic thing. Because the fact that she's saying all your siblings are getting it is more than just, it's just different and within the genes, which is scary for someone like me, because I've been very blessed to not get the diabetes even when I went through my pregnancies. And I right now, from my test results, it's like I'm far from it. But, like you say, having that idea and understanding your history of your family makes you realize that, I still have, I feel, in my power to do certain things. Like I can be more mindful. Like I don't eat sweets like a lot of them do. I'm trying to be mindful of what I eat, how I do, and being active. So I think that is so important for us to take this knowledge and do something with it. And I love your journey, especially with the hospice. Oh, bless your heart, first of all. I commend you for that as well, because I can't imagine how hard that must have been to know this stuff about yourself and then to see someone else who wasn't so fortunate. And I love that you were there to support them and help them through that transition, because it's a powerful way to give back. Very powerful way to give back.
I mean, yeah, there's so many things you just said there. I think for me, I have something called mortality motivation, which means that, my greatest teacher in life has been death.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I really believe that at the end of the day, like we're all out here, grinding and trying to climb the corporate ladder and doing this and doing that. And just being able to have the perspective that waking up every single day is a miracle, is a blessing, to be able to move your body with ease, to not be suffering from chronic pain or, you know, gasping for air. Like these are the things that I saw for so many years. And so for me, it's just, and I get goosebumps every time I think about this, because it's like we are a miracle. Like our life, like I am in awe of life, of our bodies and everything that they do. And so for me, it's like having been diagnosed with this genetic mutation and seeing my family history and all of that, but then also seeing what chronic illness looks like, how much it can take away from your livelihood and everything that we want in life, whether it's to play with our kids or whether it's, to travel the world or whether it's to build this incredible business or whatever it is we want in our life. The primary vehicle for all of that is our health. And so really what my genetic mutation brought into my life was something that I wish I learned in medical school, but enough of us doctors that are trained in the conventional system don't learn. And that is lifestyle as medicine, mindset as medicine. And so I went on to become board certified in lifestyle medicine. I went on to become a, health and wellness coach, mindset coach. And the reason I did that is because that's what I needed. When I was 26, and I had to now all of a sudden go from, seeing a primary care doctor once a year to having a breast oncologist, to having a breast surgeon, to having a genetic counselor, to having a plastic surgeon, to having like all of these people on that I had to go see. And then I had to get a mammogram and an MRI and all of these things. Like there was so much that was out of my control. And I'll be the first to tell you, as a palliative care doctor, that when you get a diagnosis, and for me, I'm not even like, I call myself a patient, but really I'm a previvor, meaning I know I have a genetic mutation that puts me at risk of a certain disease, but I don't have the disease like a cancer thriver or survivor does. And so I call myself a patient, but really it's really just a matter of being proactive. And so when I went to all of these doctors, you end up giving up so much of your control and autonomy over your life. Like that is the number one thing that I have learned in my career, and hearing so many, like thousands of patient stories, when I have come to the conclusion that the number one force of being a human being is our ability to be independent, our ability to make choices over our bodies, our ability to, care for ourselves in the most basic sense, like take ourselves to the bathroom, prepare ourselves a basic meal, walk down the stairs. Like you don't think of these things as things that you're doing, because most of us do these things without being intentional whatsoever. But like these are things, when taken away,
Yeah.
and when they're taken away, the only thing you want back in life is to be able to do these things. Like that's how powerful these everyday things that we do are. And so for me, it was like I was going to see all these doctors and was getting mammograms and MRIs, and then they saw something and then they had a biopsy, and like this whole vision of like, being in this room, in this cold, dark room, and being poked in my breasts and looking at this imaging study. And I'm a doctor and I know too much. It's
Oh.
like, what is that? Like, what, what could it be? Like
Mm-hmm.
all the things. And the only question that kept coming to my mind with every time I saw one of these doctors was like, okay, I hear what you're saying. Like, I need to get a mastectomy. I need to get a hysterectomy. I need to have kids. I need to make sure I'm done having kids. I need to do all these things. But I'm 26. Like, I'm not married yet. I'm not ready for a mastectomy. I'm not ready for a hysterectomy. I don't even know if I can get pregnant.
Oh,
Right. Like, I'm
yeah.
about to get married. I'm not even married yet. Like, there's so many things that I understand you're telling me I need to do in the next 7 years, because they wanted me to have my surgeries before the age of 33, because that's when my mom was first diagnosed.
Diagnosed, yeah.
So here's 26, and I have 7 years worth of like a lot of decisions that I
Decisions.
need to make. And for me, it kept coming back to like, okay, but right now, I still have to be able to wake up. I still have to be able to function as a human being. I need to be able to be mentally sane enough to go to the hospital every day and be caring and empathetic and compassionate towards my dying patients who need me to be clear and to be able to function. So, how do I do that when you just told me I have an 87% lifetime risk of getting breast cancer? So what is in my control? That was the question that kept coming up. What is in my control to reduce my risk of cancer that I can do today? And I kept getting, well, you have a genetic mutation. There's nothing you can do. Or I got crickets. And that was the day where my journey to being my best advocate
Yeah.
started. That
Oh,
was the day where, I did what every doctor tells you not to do, which is go on Google, which I also don't endorse because Google has a lot of scary stuff on there. But that was the day where I typed in the simple words of like, what is in my control to reduce my risk of cancer? And the science, the evidence, the amount of information that we have
yeah.
in terms of our everyday lifestyle habits, the food we're putting in our body, the way we're moving our body, our sleep, how we're managing our stress. There is so much science and evidence behind these things and how they will help us not just reduce our risk of all these diseases, but even treat and reverse some of these chronic diseases. And so that started my journey to becoming a lifestyle medicine physician. And so
I love
my genetic mutation, again, one of the greatest blessings of my lifetime, because it brought me to something that, yeah, I should have learned in medical school, but unfortunately, that's
it.
just not our system.
Of
And
course, yeah.
so that has become my message today, in the sense of like, there is so much more in our control than we are led to believe when it comes to our health. And you mentioned the diabetes piece. I mean, obviously, I'm not your doctor. I don't know your family history. I can't give you medical advice, all the things. However, I have heard time and time again, and that's why I started this conversation
Mhm.
with saying that only 5 to 10% of diseases are because of a true genetic mutation. It's a very small percentage, whereas majority of the chronic diseases we're seeing today, heart disease,
Yeah.
diabetes, stroke, Alzheimer's, cancer, 70 to 80% of these diseases are lifestyle related diseases. And so we
Right?
hear all the time,
Yeah.
it runs in my family. There's nothing I can do. I'm destined to get this.
Hmm.
But this is what I tell people. Yes, genes run in families, but so do lifestyles.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Do you realize in today's society, you see how much they've conditioned people to be lazy, to be dependent, to not feel like they're capable of really going out there and making life what they want it. Like you have to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You have to be that 1%. Like not everyone makes it. Not everyone's allowed to be, wealthy or healthy. And all that conditioning that we grow up with in society and in our environments does affect what we believe in the end. And what you believe is what you get. And that's what I'm an advocate for because, I didn't realize for so long like that I was creating my own reality just by what I was believing about myself and about what I was worth. And that
Absolutely.
has been the most transformative journey I've been on is realizing, whoa, like we really have all the power within us. We truly do, and we just don't feel like we have the permission to seek that. And I think it's incredible that you've taken this path to advocate for yourself because that is something I have learned, especially in the healthcare. Like you have to advocate for not just yourself but your kids because our healthcare system is poorly designed. And a lot of these doctors have this pressure on them that they have to, push these prescription meds because pharmaceutical is a big part of it. And I've heard stories of doctors who got in trouble for just telling their patients to exercise and to watch what they eat and to take care of themselves. It's sad, but this is why I love people like you who are out here sharing this message and letting people know that there are ways. For instance, the diabetes, I've told my mom, I was like, I've seen so many people who have healed themselves from diabetes by changing their lifestyle, by changing their mindset. It's all about what we choose to do for ourselves. And, I get that in some situations they don't have control over things, but in a lot of the situations we do. So I again think it's incredible that people like you are out here helping others.
Yeah, I mean, just to comment on a few things, I think, the most powerful thing you can do is stand guard at the entrance of your mind, right? It is not just about the food that we're eating. It is also about the food that we're consuming on screens, on our phones, the food that we're consuming from the voices of the people around us, the food that we're consuming in all the different ways. Like food or energy is not just, you know, what you're eating, right? Because you could be eating really good whole foods, but you could also be eating what majority of Americans eat, which is an ultra processed diet, which, you know, strips you of energy and makes your body sick. In the same way, what you're consuming on social media, what you're consuming through the news, what you're consuming through the people in your life will either empower you and give you energy, or it will deplete you of energy, right? So mind, body, soul, right? We are
All
like
connected.
very, yeah, connected, complex human beings. And so you have to be aware of all of these things, especially like you said, in the environment that we're living today, in these modern lifestyles where we're constantly turned on. And I want to just mention on the piece about doctors, I think, inherently doctors are incredible people. Like
Absolutely.
they dedicate their whole lives to studying and learning about the human body, and their why at the end of the day is really because they want to help people and they want to heal people. And unfortunately, it's just the way that, the conventional medical system is. We're not trained to address the root cause of diseases. We're really just trained to manage diseases once they come about,
Yeah.
right? And we're not taught anything about a lifestyle, even though there's so much science behind it, right? And so, I always say that it's really not the doctor's fault,
It's
right?
definitely, yeah, I
I
completely agree with
think
that.
we do what we're trained to do
Yeah.
until we hit a point where, and this is why the tides are turning, because more and more doctors are getting this, that like, man, I am burnt out. Like I am doing everything I know possible, but my patients are getting sicker. Like what is
Yeah.
happening, right? Like, so we're losing satisfaction in our job because we don't want our patients to be chronically sick. We don't want them to suffer. Like inherently, we are good people who want our patients to get better and to heal. But people are starting to realize that doctors are starting to realize that no matter what I'm doing, my patients aren't getting better. Like I can keep writing more prescriptions, but they're not getting better. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you that as a palliative care physician, because I kind of see people at the end of the trajectory, right? Like I
Yeah.
see them at the end stages of the diseases. And I can tell you that all of my patients were on medications for decades and decades, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of taking these medications for what we call the silent killers, things like obesity and high blood pressure and high cholesterol and prediabetes and diabetes. These are the silent killers that we medicate people for. And over many, many years, we just slow down the progression of the disease. We don't address the root cause of why people have these diseases. And there is nothing normal about having these diseases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're mostly related to our lifestyle. And over many, many years, you get the massive heart attack, you get the massive stroke, your kidneys fail, you end up on dialysis. Those are the end stage complications of these diseases that we basically, prescribe medications for to keep them at bay, to slow down the progression, to buy more time. But we never really address the root cause. And that is, I think, ever since the pandemic, that is really the awareness that is coming to light now,
Yeah.
right? And so more doctors, like the American College of Lifestyle Medicine is one of the fastest growing fields in medicine right now. And, more doctors want to learn about this, and they get to this point because more doctors than ever before, and not just doctors, but healthcare providers in general, are so sick themselves with these chronic diseases.
Yeah.
They're burnt out, they're chronically stressed, they have really high levels of substance abuse and suicide. And so they're coming to this because they are their own first patient. Like they're coming to lifestyle medicine because they need it. Right.
Yeah.
But I think the tides are turning and things are changing, and there are going to be more doctors like me and who are interested in addressing the root cause and telling people that, there are a lot of really cool tools that you can use, but if you're not doing the basic things like really turning your food around and reading labels and learning how to read an ingredients label and going for a walk, getting sunlight, limiting the amount of time you're on your screen. Like these are little things that we can do every single day that I can tell you as a palliative care physician are the best investment that you can make in your life in the long run, because they have a stacking effect. Every single one of these habits has a stacking effect in reducing our risk of disease and improving our quality of life. And then, your audience is moms, right? And so kids will not do, I promise you, kids will not do what you tell them to do, but they will do what they see you doing.
Yeah.
So the way that we're living our life, we are a silent role model for the adults our kids will become in the future.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of why I want to inspire people to take care of themselves first. As moms, we do quite the opposite, right? We put ourselves on the back burners. We neglect ourselves because we feel like we have to take care of everyone else, but we don't realize like what we're teaching our kids by just doing that. And we're depleting ourselves from the joy and the happiness that we deserve that could help us to show up better. And so that is a huge part of my messaging as well that I want to help moms to do, is to not have that guilt or even that perspective of it being a guilty thing for you wanting to take time for you and to go after your dreams and to do what you want, because you matter too. And that is something I think with the healthcare is a huge part. And I love it. Absolutely. Because, when I hear you talking, I think about, my husband's father is a doctor and he works for the VA, and it breaks his heart to see the political side of
Yeah.
the way they do, because he's one of those who likes to sit and actually listen to his patient and
Yeah.
really help them. And I love to see that the tables are turning, because I know that the doctors out there care. I know that they're only trained so much, and they're also doing what they're told they have to do. And
Yeah.
that's heartbreaking, because so many people in this world could, like you say, basic stuff. could completely change so much where they don't have to rely on medication. They don't have to, feel defeated that this is just the way it is. And now I got
Yeah.
to take this for the rest of my life, or I got to do this for the rest of my life. It's like it doesn't have to be that way. And the evidence is all around. I see stories all the time of people who have cured their own diseases or have changed things in their life and transformed their lives around by just taking action and being proactive. So it's just amazing to see that this is becoming more and more of a thing. And I want to also reflect too, you are a mom of two. So
Yeah.
within your journey, I am curious to know a little bit more about that, like how that unfolded, because you're here, you are 26 being told all these things. You have the 7 year mark. So how did that end up unfolding for you in your life where you actually did to have the two children that you have today?
Yeah, so basically, after we got married, I went on to do my fellowship in hospice and palliative care. It was a really busy year, but then we basically started trying to get pregnant right away. My husband's actually 10 years older than me, so it worked out pretty well in the sense that like he was very ready to have a family, whereas I think most 26-year-olds today would not be ready to start a family. So for us, it works out well in that sense. And it was a true blessing that basically as soon as we started trying, we got pregnant. And it was, like I said, those early days I look back on, they were really hard because here, and we live in America, but all our families in Canada. So that whole thing that makes raising children even harder in our modern societies is most of us are raising children in silos and not in the community
Yes.
sense that we did for, decades and decades as human beings. And so those early days were really hard for me. I was pregnant, I wasn't feeling well, I was caring for dying people, and like
Mhm.
worried about getting cancer in the future. Like there was just so much fear and anxiety in my everyday life. And at that point, like I didn't really know what an impact, today's World Mental Health Day, like what an impact simply just going for a 20-minute walk in the sunshine can have on your mental health. Like I didn't know all these little things and the science to back it up. And so those days, those early days were riddled with anxiety and fear. I mean, my first year, because I was also pregnant, but my first year of working in palliative care, I think I cried every single
Mhm.
day. It was really hard because it's like, you're pregnant and you have this mutation. It's like, am I gonna be here for the future? But like I just lost a patient today and she left her kids at her bedside. And there was just so much there, right? And I went on knowing that I basically had to have kids back to back. So, we had my daughter, most incredible human being ever. So blessed to be her mom. But we went on to get pregnant right away again. So she was 9 months old when I got pregnant again with my son.
Mhm.
And it just so happened, like my husband's also a physician. And it just so happened that because I'm Canadian, I was on a visa. And
Right.
so I had to work full time. I didn't have the choice to not work because if I didn't work, I would have lost my visa. And it was like a whole thing. So here I am
Yeah.
like working full time, forced in palliative care. Also couldn't take the time I wanted to take after each pregnancy to be with my kids because I only, again, like pregnancy and maternity leave is like a disability in this country, which is
I know.
absolutely ridiculous and a
Yes.
conversation all in its own.
Yeah.
But those first few years were really hard, and we went on to have our kids 19 months apart, and at the same time my whole journey was unfolding of like learning. And the other thing is like when we become moms or we become pregnant, it's like all of a sudden everything switches, and all of a sudden you are more aware of the toxins in your beauty products and your home products, and like all of a sudden you want to be more aware of the food. And it's crazy, like
I know.
we as human beings, especially as mothers, will do more for other people, especially our children, than we will ever do for ourselves. And, that's how my early days were. And I was even more motivated, knowing about this genetic history in our family. When I had my kids, I was even more motivated to learn about the things that we could control. And so the first thing that we really started, and it was just perfect timing because like as my daughter was starting to eat and all of that, like our first focus was really on nutrition. And that was after like, my biggest thing is like if you're trying to go somewhere with a goal, whether it's your health or your business or whatever, find someone who's done it. And proximity is
Yeah.
power. Like
Yeah.
find someone who's done it and do what they did to
Yeah.
save yourself time. And so even before I got pregnant, we did some blood work, we did all that stuff to get a baseline on our health. And hospital food is the worst. My husband and I gained a lot of weight during residency. He gained like 20 pounds, I gained like 15 pounds. And so even before we had kids, we really took a blueprint of like, where are we with our health? And we found out that he was 34. You never would have thought, like, you look at this guy, he's slim, he's trim, he looks healthy, but his blood work showed that he had borderline high blood pressure, he had high cholesterol, he was pre-diabetic. It's crazy. So, this perception that what we see on the outside is really not what's going on the inside. And so we did this 12-week coaching program and totally turned our lives around metabolically.
Yay.
I lost the weight, he lost the weight, he reversed all of his numbers. And really, 11 years later, we're in the same metabolic shape as we were back then.
Yeah.
Right. And so then our first focus after we had children became really like nutrition. And so we worked on that based off of everything that I was learning about. And then it really wasn't until 2020. So at the height of the pandemic, so after I finished nursing both my kids. That was one of the biggest deals with my doctors. Like they wanted me to just have my surgeries after I had my kids. And I was like, no, I will nurse each of my kids for a year because that is what is best for them. And so I nursed them each for a year. And then as I was weaning my son, we basically were entering into the pandemic. And before I knew we were entering into the pandemic, I actually started meeting with plastic surgeons and all of that stuff to schedule my surgeries. And so I decided to have a risk reducing bilateral mastectomy. So removing both my breasts, and I chose not to have reconstruction. A whole nother story. But for me, I just felt like, my breasts did what they were meant to do on this earth, which was nurse these babies, grow them, and do all the things. So I had aesthetic flat closure, meaning I have no reconstruction. And then I had a total hysterectomy, basically putting myself into surgical menopause at 32. And I did all of that at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, geez.
While being married to an ICU doctor and being a palliative care doctor myself, my husband and I probably saw more death in that year than we would have in a lifetime of working as doctors. And so that, no doubt, hands down, was probably one of the hardest years of my life, but also the year that I became the strongest version of myself, for sure.
It is those things that do strengthen you in the end. It's great to see you come out of that strong and resilient rather than defeated, because that is, God, that's no easy feat for sure to be going through. I just couldn't imagine having to deal with that, especially during COVID. It was such a crazy time for
So
everyone.
crazy.
It was, yeah.
And it wasn't until after my surgeries where like all these other pieces of like my lifestyle really fell into place, because I was at the prime of my health, 32, healthy, no issues, amazing surgical candidate, but I ended up having a major complication where I bled, and so ended up having emergency surgery afterwards. Ended up staying in the hospital longer than anticipated. Ended up way weaker than I was anticipating I would be. Like I was supposed to be having surgery and out home the next day. And I stayed in the hospital for a few days extra, and basically for the next couple of weeks relied on my husband to help bathe me, help wash me, help get me up from the recliner. And, again, back to those basic everyday things. And it wasn't until this like one day where it really hit me. And I was sitting in the recliner, and, this was like this time of year. So it was starting to get dark and everybody was downstairs. I didn't have my phone, and I had drains. And because I had, a top surgery and I had a bottom surgery, I couldn't just get up on my own. I needed help.
Yeah.
And so I had to pee. And my husband was downstairs and I couldn't call him. And he comes up, and now it's dark. And I'm sitting in the recliner. I'm just crying. And for me, it was just like, if I can help it, I will never be in this position again where I am dependent on somebody to have to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
will do everything in my power going forward to keep my body strong, to keep my body healthy, and to give it what it needs to thrive. And, for a short while, to just have that perspective of what it meant to live in the shoes of one of my chronically ill patients was enough to tell me, as a mom, as a woman, that like self-care is not selfish. Simran, self-care is your self-preservation. And if you can't function, you can't pour into the cups of anybody else that you love, whether it be your husband or your kids or your parents or your patients or your friends, whoever. And that was the day, like 8 weeks later, my doctor cleared me for exercise. And ever since then, like, my kids know. Actually, recently, my son came to me in the gym in the morning. He's like, Mama, why do you exercise every morning? And my daughter jumps in and she's like, she exercises so that she can take care of us. And like, these are the connections.
Mm-hmm.
These are the connections that when you make, like, you are setting the foundation for your kids' beliefs of like, taking care of your body, taking care of your mental health, taking care of the food you're putting in your body. These are all ways that you're taking care of your children. It's showing them that you love them. And so it's just, for me, this is what it's all about now. If you follow me on social media, you know that I am always just showing up and sharing valuable ways that you can incorporate even the littlest habits into your life. And I'm a big proponent of, don't use social media as a mirror of what your life should look like. Don't fall for the highlight reels of people's lives, because I can tell you that social media and what you see 99% of the time is not real. Every single one of us will be dealt with beautiful times and hard times.
Oh, yeah.
And I can tell you personally, it is so much harder to show up on social media when your life is a hot mess. There's not that many people who do it, right? So that's why I really value the people who show up with vulnerability and authenticity. But even then, it's like, we all need our space. When we're going through a hard time, it's hard to show up online. It really is. And so don't use other people's highlight reels as an example of what your life should be like, right? Look yourself in the mirror and figure out like, okay, what season of life am I in and what is possible for me right now that I can consistently do, right? It's not about perfection. Like, don't let progress be the enemy, right? Progress is everything in life, and it's all about the season of life that you're in right now. There is no way that I would be able to do everything that I'm doing today, if you didn't that start. Year, that year when I found out about my mutation, or that year when I, had 2 kids 18 months apart, or that year when I had, major surgery while taking care of dying people from COVID. Like, now I'm able to do all these things. But if you came and just found me now and saw me on social media, you'd think I'm bionic. But it's because I'm in a different season of life. It's because I've been through different experiences in my life that have set a standard for what my life is like, have set non-negotiables. Like, movement is a non-negotiable. Eating a lot of different vegetables and fruits is a non-negotiable. Not drinking alcohol is a non-negotiable. So there's just a lot of things in my life now that I've learned from my own experience as a patient, from the science, but also from like the stories and legacies of my patients that are non-negotiable. And this is my life now. But if you came to me now, you would think it's too overwhelming. And that's why I'm saying, like, don't use anyone else's social media reel as what your life should look like. Really figure out, like, even if it's a 5-minute walk or cooking, one meal a week, or whatever tiny habit it is you're able to implement into your life today, make that possible for you. Because down the road, that's what's going to change your life.
I love it. I love it. That's exactly what I talk about, baby steps. I feel like so many of us moms feel like we have to do it all. And it's like, enough with that. Okay, let's just do it. Just honor where you are now. Like, it's
Yeah,
okay to be real. Like, my life is like this crazy busy thing. Well, you know what? I can't do all the things that she's doing. That's fine. I can do what I can do, and that's okay. And I think when we honor that and when we start having compassion for that, we actually get more done and we
yeah,
realize. So
yeah,
it's like, don't overwhelm yourself feeling like you have to do all the things that everyone else is doing or tells you that you should be doing. Figure out what you can do and just do it. And
yeah,
then you'll surprise yourself by how you start building up the new habits over time of just being consistent, even with the small things. Like,
yeah,
small things make a big difference. It's one of my favorite things to say, and it is what I'm all about, sharing
yeah.
with people. I have to ask too, because you have a daughter, for someone who might be in a situation with you who has that genetic conditioning, and I'm sure you think about this with having a daughter, how would you, or I don't know if you're doing this, I know she's young still. How do you plan to, if you're, I know obviously through your actions, you're already setting such an amazing example and role modeling for her. What would you suggest to somebody about having a conversation and preparing somebody who you know could end up with the same genes?
Yep.
What would you say to them?
So I think there is more power in setting an example with your lifestyle habits
Yeah.
than anything else at this stage of life, right? Where she's at right now, she's 7.5.
Exactly.
And the reason I say that is because, you know, there's a quote that genes load the gun, but, our lifestyle can pull the trigger, because
Mhm.
what lifestyle affects is something called our epigenes or our epigenetics. And these are really the switches inside our body that can turn genes on and turn genes off. And those are mostly influenced by our lifestyle. So our diet, the way we move our body, whether we're using substances, our sleep, all of that. And so, I'm empowering her with the tools that will not just help her reduce her risk of cancer. But the number one killer today is, I think today is World Metabolic Health Day. This week is crazy. It's like menopause month, it's breast cancer awareness month, it's like metabolic
I
health day,
know
World Mental Health
that
Day.
they,
But the thing is, like, our lifestyle has the
yes,
power to help all of these things,
yeah,
to reduce our risk of cancer, to reduce our risk of mental health issues, to reduce our risk of metabolic health issues. But here's the thing, like, yes, it's important for her and for us as a family to talk about cancer risk reduction. But guess what? Her risk of dying from heart disease in the future is still higher than it is of cancer, because 1 in 2 women are still going to die of heart disease, right? 1 in 3 people today are pre-diabetic. Half of our population is pre-diabetic or diabetic. Like, these statistics are staggering. And
yes,
so the tools that I'm empowering her with in terms of like our everyday lifestyle habits, the way we're eating, the way we're moving, the people we're talking to, the sleep that we're getting, like, these tools are helping her reduce her lifetime risk of multiple chronic illnesses, not just the cancer piece. And when it comes specifically to the genetic mutation and pursuing genetic testing, you know, and I'm such a big proponent of informed consent, right? This is what I did for 10 years with my patients, right? Like, should I pursue this surgery? Well, what are the risks? What are the benefits? What are the alternatives? Like, you really have to be able to understand all of that information before you can have a conversation
yeah,
about, a test or whatever, genetic testing. And so, the recommendation is to wait until kids are at least 18. And even with these genetic mutations, the chance of cancer before, age 20 is very, very low. And that's why the lifestyle piece is even more important, because the lifestyle habits that kids have that we set in childhood are a blueprint for their risk of disease as adults. And so, for her, it's even more important with the fact that she might have this gene, she might not. It's even more important for the lifestyle piece to be in place.
please.
right? Especially now, you see what's happening. Almost half our population of kids are overweight or obese, right?
Yes. Yes.
Pediatricians are learning to treat diabetes. Pediatricians are learning to treat high
Yes.
cholesterol, high blood
And now
pressure
in
at 10, 11,
children.
12 years old.
Sad.
And
So
like I
sad.
said, it's like
Yeah.
these are the silent killers, right? So
Yeah.
our children, and this is going to be a staggering quote, but like our children today are the first generation at risk of dying before their parents, before us, because they're being diagnosed with diseases in their, preteens and teens that, a decade, 2, 3 decades later are going to be the massive heart attack, the stroke, the diabetes, like that is all going to happen if they're being diagnosed at 10. By 30 or 40, they're going to be having the massive heart attack, right?
Mm.
And that's not what we're not putting all these pieces of the puzzle together. And so setting this example for not just yourself and your life, but for your kids, for the future of our existence as humans on this planet is so important.
Yeah.
So important. And I think, to touch on your piece earlier of like, it's do what you can, it's the little everyday habits, but it's also okay to get help. And this is where I differ in my opinion from a lot of doctors, because it's like either doctors are only medication, 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 right? Or their like lifestyle is the only answer. Like you have to be able to, you know, eat only in this way. You have to sleep 8 hours a night. You have to exercise 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a week. You have to not drink any alcohol, tobacco, da, 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 da. And like, it's like this perfect,
Mhm.
lifestyle. But it's like when you put that in the modern lifestyle of like two parents that are working multiple jobs and income and raising children away from family and all the things that come with a modern lifestyle, it's very hard to do all of that. And so that's where I have now kind of created a platform where I'm working with people who are looking for momentum, right?
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, that coaching program that my husband and I did, we used some tools
Yeah.
that address, mental health, gut health, and metabolic health to give us that momentum over that 3-month period to really, while addressing the root cause, show us results. Because once you start seeing results, once you see that weight start coming off, or once you start getting more energy or that brain fog going away, you're automatically going to make better choices,
Yeah.
right? Like most of us don't realize how bad we feel until we don't feel bad anymore. Right. And
Right?
so
Yeah.
you got to look for momentum, and it's okay to get help. And so that's really what I'm doing now is like I've created a platform where I have a set of tools that I have discovered over the past 10 years that work really well. They're easy to implement in your lifestyle, and they give you momentum.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, you can continue to slowly work on the lifestyle habits based on what season of life you're in. Right.
Love
So
that.
I'm putting together some programs, group coaching, especially for moms,
Yeah.
busy women. So I'm doing a few things, but yeah, I share a lot of this on like social media and
Oh, yeah. And tell us a little bit
that
about like if
place.
anyone wants to follow you or even look more into your offers, like where was the best place for them to find you and connect with you?
Mostly Instagram. So I'm at Dr. Simran Malhotra on Instagram and all the other social platforms. And then my website is coachsimranmd.com. So yeah, I'm in the process. I just left my job in July at the hospital. And so I'm in the process, took some time off, but now I'm in the process of kind of working through everything to see how I can give the most value to people at different stages of wherever they are.
Yeah. Meet them where they're at. And that's what's
Exactly.
so important too, because you're right. It's not a one size fits all with anybody. Like we all are in different places, and it's so important to find somebody who meets you where you're at. Because my goal is for someone to meet themselves where they're at. I know we have our goals and we want to be somewhere else and we want a different lifestyle, but we have to start here and now where we are before we can actually get to that point. And that is what it's all about. And that's why it's great to have that support and that help, because it's not easy, and that's okay.
No.
It's not meant to be easy. If it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, right?
Yeah.
It
And
is
that's
so.
like one of the biggest things that I tell my kids, that nothing worth having is easy to get.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah, me too. I always tell them that it's And that's the thing is, like I said again earlier, like the conditioning we have been giving in society is almost driving everyone, and especially in today's generation, to be dependent, to be
Mhm.
lazy, to want the instant satisfaction, the instant now, now, now. And that is a hard thing to undo for so many of them. But if you are at a point where you're ready for it, it is 100% possible. And it's the best thing and best decision you'll ever make for yourself. And especially if you're as a mom for your kids, because
Yeah.
they are going to become what you show them.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's a hard pill to swallow in itself sometimes, because we're like, ah, I know that I've had a lot of work. I have a 3-year old, a 5-year old, and a 16-year old. So I have a
Oh, wow.
big range. And so my
Yeah.
16-year old saw a different version of me because I was 20 when I had him technically, and then I turned 21 a month later. So I was very young, and I
Yeah.
had just gotten off. I had come from a life of drug addiction, so
Yeah.
I had changed my whole life and didn't even really know who I was. So I was so focused on just him, and doing all the things and putting myself on the back burner. So he saw a different version of myself than who I am today. And
Yeah.
I'm love that my young kids are getting to see a different version of me, and even him still. He's such a great kid.
Yeah.
I couldn't be prouder of him. So it's so cool to be able to shift and to realize the impact that I
Yeah.
have on them, which makes it even more exciting almost too, that I get to put myself first, that I get to have a different perspective, that I get to do these things and not feel guilty. Because
Yeah.
I know, like when my daughters ask me, well, you got another call, mommy? And I'm like,
Yeah.
my honey, she'll realize that I'm doing this to help better our future, to help others, and to create the future, the life that we deserve. And she's gonna love that when she sees me mommy on podcasts
Yeah.
when she gets older and things like that.
Yeah.
So I can't wait. And I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic what you do. And I always open the floor, of course. Is there any final piece of advice or inspiration you want to share with the listeners before we end here?
So I think the three things that have gotten me through the last 10 years of my life, specifically speaking to the moms out here, is grit, grace, and gratitude. So, if you have a giant staircase ahead of you that you need to climb, just focus on the first step and do it with grit. Make progress. Just keep taking one step in front of the other, and you will get where you want to be with your health or whatever other goals that you're setting. Grace, you are human, you are one person, and you may be in a season of life that is really hard right now, and that's okay. Don't let perfection be the enemy of your progress. And gratitude. This life is such a gift. It is such a gift. And if you woke up today, you are alive, that is a blessing. And you have time to do whatever it is that you want to do. And just feel the gratitude and be present, especially have little kids. Like, this time is not going to come again. That is true. And it's also true that the time you're putting in now is setting the foundation for the relationship you will have with them for the rest of their adult life.
Oh,
So be present and live with gratitude.
oh, yeah. Love it. Most inspirational. I'm beautiful advice, and that touches my heart. And I hope for anyone listening that you really soak that in and really take that to heart, because that is truly, truly everything right there. That can make all the difference for you in your life. Gratitude, especially, is a beautiful thing to have. You're right. There's so much. Some people might want to say, "Oh, what do I have to be grateful for?" The fact that you're breathing, the fact that you can walk, the fact that you can take yourself to the bathroom, even something so simple as that, you don't even realize how lucky you are that people would kill to be able to do still, that have lost that. So there's always something that you can be grateful for. I can't thank you enough for being here with us on the show today. Thank you for all that you've shared, for all that you do. It's truly a blessing to be in presence with someone like you, for sure.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
What a powerful story. Here are the key takeaways from today's episode. Your choices shape your health. You have the power to take proactive steps for your health when you're aimed with the right information. Genetic testing and awareness can offer life-changing options to reduce risk and live healthier. Perspective is everything. Life's challenges, even genetic predispositions, can feel overwhelming. But when you focus on what's right and the opportunities available to you, you can turn what feels like a curse into a blessing. Knowledge is empowering. Understanding your family health history, even in cultures or families where health issues are not openly discussed, can save lives. Open communication and curiosity about your background can lead to preventative actions. Your health journey is unique. Whether it's genetic risk, family health history, or lifestyle factors, your path to health is personal. Don't compare your journey to others. Focus on what you can do to move forward. Turn challenges into purpose. Life's difficulties can guide you to your true purpose. Use your experiences, even the hard ones, to find strength and help others navigate similar struggles. Celebrate the opportunity to choose. Advances in medicine and genetics give you the ability to make informed choices. Celebrate and utilize these opportunities to live the fullest life possible. Small changes lead to big results. Implementing manageable incremental changes in daily habits like nutrition, exercise, and reducing screen time can have a profound positive effect on health and well-being over time. These small actions build momentum and stack up to create significant long-term outcomes. As parents, our actions speak louder than our words. By prioritizing our health and well-being, we model healthy habits for our children, setting the foundation for their future choices and lifestyles. The importance of self-care, especially for moms, putting yourself last can feel like the norm, but it's crucial to challenge that mindset. Taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's a necessity for showing up as your best self for your family and living a life of joy and purpose that you deserve. Empathy in healthcare. As practitioners or even caregivers, understanding and addressing root causes rather than just symptoms create a deeper sense of fulfillment and can inspire hope and change in patients. Community and support matter. The isolation of raising children without strong community support system highlights the importance of building networks of care, whether through family, friends, or professional communities. I have included Simran's links in the show notes for you to connect and learn more about lifestyle changes you can start making today and get the support you need. If you know anyone who would find value from tuning in, please be sure to share this episode with them. Also, if you found this inspiring and of value, please leave us a review, and we love to hear from our listeners, so let us know if you have any questions or anything to share so we know how best to support you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Until next time, much love.